All right. So after you've looked at your organization, I want you to take a look at accurate representation. And what this means is, are you accurately representing what the events or the story is actually saying? So essentially, do you understand what this event or what the story was? I found a lot of, so this could either be, there could either be, like when you misrepresent something, there's a couple different reasons why that might be. Oftentimes we automatically assume, oh, this person is quote unquote stupid and they don't understand the story. The frustration that I have is that that's typically not the case. Like, you're all intelligent. You all read the story. I've watched you do Socratic seminars on this story. I have heard your conversations about the story. It is not about not knowing the story. What I think happens quite a bit is that we're either rushing or we're not taking the time to make sure that we're representing it honestly. And some of you, I think, had a theme that you wanted to talk about, couldn't find the best evidence to support it. So what you did instead is you put evidence in there, or you fudged it a little bit to make sure it fits. So I don't think it has anything to do with I don't understand the story. That's not the case. I think it has to do with laziness in proofreading and not wanting to do the work of finding the real theme and instead distorting the story to fit your theme. So let's take a look at this example. This is an example where I found multiple spots where the student was taking liberties or imposing their own vision about the story to make it fit their theme. So only thing I'm going to talk about is representation of the evidence, like how the evidence represents the story. So I'm not going to talk about anything having to do with citations. I'm not going to talk anything about having to do with sentence structure. I'm not going to do that, okay? I'm only going to be talking about the representation. So I know that there are other errors, but let's take a look. In the short story, The Interlopers, has many compelling meanings, but one of the strongest themes is that the conflict will hurt both parties even after forgiveness. The whole story is based around a conflict started years before any of the main characters were alive. As the story says, this conflict was started in the days of his grandfather, and it all revolves around a little piece of land. So this story takes place in those woods where the men are hunting for each other, trying to end the dispute. That's my first thing. So you got to make sure that you understand what the story was actually saying. So in this case, they're not necessarily, like, we don't know what George is doing. We know that Ulrich, let's see. There it is. So in the first page, it does say, like, he was out there with his rifle, but the game for whose presence he was so keen an outlook was none that the figured sportsman calendar as lawful or proper for chase. He was out there in quest of a human. He patrolled the dark for a human prey. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean he was looking for George. He could have been looking for anyone from the family, because it says, like, the family continues or constantly poaches their land. So he's not necessarily saying, like, I'm looking to kill them. Instead, it is saying, like, he's out there knowing that somebody's out there and he's going to chase them out there, looking for human prey, meaning, like, I'm going to get them. Not necessarily, they weren't looking, and he wasn't necessarily looking to try and kill somebody. He just wanted to get them off his land. And if they had to kill them, like, okay. Now, even if you don't agree with me on that front, we have no idea what George was thinking. This is a third person limited story because we get Ulrich's his thoughts. So we have Ulrich, what he is doing, but we don't know what George, like, George could just be out there, George could just be out there hunting. So this student is taking liberties with the story and saying that they're out hunting each other, trying to end this dispute. Also, doesn't say anything about ending the dispute. Instead, what this says is, like, he's just looking for somebody that's on his land. How do we know he's not trying to chase them off his land? So, a little bit of a problem there. Continuing. The reader can clearly see the strong conflict between the two men, so the men meet in the woods. So when the men meet in the woods, you, oh my God, assume that things are gonna turn sour real quick. After a harsh talk, a strong gust of wind blows down a branch, pinning both men and injuring them. So I got a question. Do they have a strong talk when they see each other? Let's see. Going, seeing. They're there. He stepped to the trunk, face to face with the man he sought. Code, but the man has brought them there. He didn't have the nerve. His heavy shooting boots saved his feet. Like, it starts falling like here. They don't talk. There's no discussion. There's no heated dispute. What is happening? After a harsh talk? What? There is no talking. There's nothing there. So, like, that's, even though it might seem small, it really detracts from the writer's credibility. Like, they don't have a harsh talk. But so let's continue. So in a way, this could be a strong showing of the theme. That commentary doesn't make any sense, but let's move on. Both men bickering in the woods, which they were in only because they were looking to fight with one another. What? So the student again is combining two inaccuracies of the story. That they're bickering in the woods, which they weren't up until this point, and that they weren't trying to fight one another. They're just trying to one was trying to hunt him, the other was trying to chase the other off the land. This is one way that conflict hurt them, but the strongest, most meaningful point comes along at the end. While the two men are waiting for the men to come and save them, they actually reconcile and work together to get out of the situation. They both call for their men, hoping to get out of the forest together and end the hate that exists between them. While calling, they see figures appear in the forest, and they start calling even louder. At this point, the reader might be thinking that just because the two have forgiveness... Okay, not a big deal. The rest of this is, like, not a big deal. But what I'm trying to point out is that, like, this is not accurate. And actually, the accuracy is problematic because it doesn't actually... It doesn't... The student doesn't even have commentary to prove that the evidence links up to the theme. And so, like, why would you misrepresent the story? To me, this smacks of laziness. Like, you're not just reading through your stuff. Perhaps you didn't even read the story initially to get a good understanding of it. So so either the student didn't read the story carefully, they didn't spend time taking a look at what was being said in the story, they didn't take a look at what evidence they need in order to support their theme, and instead they just made some assumptions. Also notice the complete and utter lack of evidence. There's one quote, and then there's another one where they say wolves, which I've already expressed earlier, like, why would you have a quote of one word? So, yeah. Make sure that you are representing the story accurately. So regardless if it's a story, regardless if it is a personal experience or something you witnessed, you got to make sure that you are being accurate. Okay, accurately conveying what happened in the story or the event. Take a look. Were you accurate in what you said about the story?